Hello and welcome to React.js Case Study Festival. My name is Adora and I am more than excited to be giving this talk today. Today I'm going to be talking about habits for building effective and inclusive engineering teams. But before we get into the talk, one of the first things I would like to do is share a little bit about teamwork, and I found this very helpful video that does that well, so I'm just going to go ahead and play this video for you to watch. I see that teamwork is something that is very important. Initially, when they tried using their spoons to feed themselves, nothing could work, nothing was working, and when they decided to work together as a team and do things together and feed each other, they were able to accomplish what they were able to accomplish, because at the end of the day, they all had a common goal, but their stubbornness for not wanting to work together initially was preventing them from reaching that goal. And to be honest, when we look at the world we're in, it's crazy how different we can actually be, like ourselves and the next person. There are so many ways, there's so many spheres of diversity, there's so many things. So it's important to understand that in building these teams, we also need to create safe spaces for these people that we're going to be working with to feel excited and to bring their most authentic selves to the workplace and to whatever it is they're doing, because at the end of the day, we're all different. What you like might not be what somebody else likes. What you enjoy might not be what somebody else enjoys. You might even be different in tradition. You might be different in, your race. You might be different in other areas that exist that could possibly make people different. So it's important to know these things so that we can work together to create these effective and inclusive safe spaces where people can come, work, and be their most authentic self. So now I'll go ahead and define teamwork. Teamwork is the collaborative effort of a group to achieve a common goal or to complete a task in the most effective and efficient way. This concept is seen within the greater framework of a team, which is a group of interdependent individuals who work together towards a common goal. Now, when we think about it, the main thing is, as team members, as people, because when we talk about building effective engineering teams, at the end of the day, these teams consist of people. So we need to start with the people first. So as people in the team, how do we go from being dependent to being interdependent team members and building an effective team? That's what I'm going to be talking about today in this talk. But before I dive into it, I would want to quickly introduce myself. Hi, my name is Adora, and I am a software engineer at Microsoft Mixed Reality. I am a tech content creator at Adora Hack, which is also the shirt I happen to be wearing right now. Adora Hack is a blog that I have created where I talk about tech, I talk about my life as a software engineer, I talk about career growth, some things I share as I learn them, some things I already know. I share all these things on Adora Hack. I'm the co-founder of Unstack, which is a developer community that was created in Lagos, Nigeria, and has scaled to other different locations. I'm also an advisory board member of VRAR Association Nigeria, which is the Nigerian chapter of the Global VRAR Association. You can also find me on Twitter at Adora Nwodo if you want to say hi, if you want to ask a question or anything at all. So now let's get into it. Let's talk about the definition of teamwork again. We've said it's a collaborative effort with a group of people to achieve a common goal in the most effective and efficient way. This has to do with people. We've talked about the concept of teamwork being drawn from the framework of a team, which is a group of interdependent individuals. So basically, what we now need to ask ourselves is, how do we go from being dependent to being interdependent? That's important, right? And this talk is based on one of the important life books I have read, and it's called The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And basically, you go from being dependent, like, oh, I can't do this myself, to being independent, which is, I can do this myself. And then when you become independent, your next level is becoming and staying. It's important to stay, right? The next level is thinking about becoming and staying interdependent, which is, I can do this and you can do something else. We should do this together. In a software engineering team, it's never one engineer. That's why it's a team. You need people. There might be ML engineers, there might be front-end engineers, there might be back-end engineers, there might be DevOps people, there might be mobile engineers and all of these things. And this is looking at the engineering side. At the end of the day, you as an engineer, you are building for customers. You're working with product managers, project managers, product designers. You're working with other people that make up the broader team, and everyone is working towards that common goal. So these essential habits are broken down into 3 buckets. The first bucket is going from dependent to independent. The second bucket is going from independent to interdependent. And the third bucket is staying interdependent. So now let's look at the first bucket, which is going from dependent to independent. The first thing there is you should learn to be proactive. You should learn, there's something called the circle of influence, which is the things that you can actually control. It's important to know what your circle of influence is and try to make impacts in your circle. Don't try to chase after things that you cannot control, things you don't have control of. You need to learn to make impacts in your circle. You need to acknowledge your own responsibility. If there is, I'm going to give an example here. Let's say something went wrong with an app that was being built. As opposed to blaming every single person that is blamable, one thing that you can do is learn from that experience. Let's be honest, as human beings, we're always going to make mistakes. You are not less of a human being because you made a mistake. What's important is what you learn from that mistake, what you learn, what the experience teaches you, essentially. And a proactive person acknowledges that, okay, this is my life and I am responsible for this, and this is what I have learned from this experience, and going forward, these mistakes I made, I will not make again. For example, something happened, you were writing code or something. So let me give this example. You're a DevOps person and you accidentally did something where you deleted an entire environment, and because of that, customers are trying to hit that service and they can't hit it. Customers are trying to get access to the application and the entire thing is down. It's like, okay, why is this thing down? You might even be trending on Twitter that your app is down and you are trying to fix that problem. As you've been able to fix and mitigate that problem, there are some things you would have learned from that experience. There are some holes that you would have discovered that, oh, if this thing was properly closed, if this thing was properly patched, this thing would not have happened. So I'm going to go ahead and take control of this situation. Now that we have mitigated this issue, I'll go ahead and take the extra step and do this thing so that what happened today doesn't happen again. That's a proactive person. You are anticipating that there's a chance that this thing can happen again in the future, and you are taking the necessary steps to make sure that they don't happen again, because this is something that you can control and you've decided to control it and make sure it doesn't happen again. So that's things like that, Other things that proactive people can do are proactive people acknowledge their own responsibility. They are not reactive. They focus on the impacts they can make in their circle. They communicate effectively to their team members, to their managers. They communicate, because if they don't, there's a chance that something could go wrong. And a proactive person wants to be able to be in control of the things that they can control, right? Proactive people seek opportunities and not limitations. It's never a case of, oh, I can't do this thing, but it's more a case of, oh, how do I do this thing? How do we do this thing? At the end of the day, a question opens the mind and a statement closes the mind. It's something that the author of Rich Dad Poor Dad said, which is something that has stuck with me for a very long time, because I found out that's actually true. When I ask questions, I find myself getting new information. I find myself learning new things. But when I make a statement, it's like, okay, that's it and that's the end, and there's nothing anybody can do about it, essentially. So proactive people seek opportunities, not limitations. They learn from their mistakes, they learn to be accountable, and they learn to manage their time, which is something that is very important. The second thing on the list for me is beginning with the end in mind. So when you think about beginning with the end in mind, it's more about knowing about your visions, knowing about your goals, not being short-sighted. When you're about to do something, think about it in the long run. Always think long term. Be future thinking, be forward thinking. in the long run, how is this thing going to add value to me, my co-workers, my team, my customers? This is something you should think about as someone that is trying to become independent. You have to learn to pick up this habit of being forward thinking, not being short-sighted, knowing what the particular goal is, knowing what the particular mission is, and not just being someone that can easily go wherever the wind is going, essentially. The next thing is putting first things first. You have to learn how to plan, prioritize, understand important versus urgent, because it's something that would help you a lot. Know what the important things you should be doing are for your team when you're working on a task, when you're working on a certain deliverable for a certain date. Know how to order and prioritize the tasks, because sometimes things don't go as planned. Things don't go the way we planned it in our teams or in our heads. But being able to prioritize, so that even if we have to launch but we've not concluded a lot of things, we know the things that we can prioritize that have to go before the launch, and things that we can deal with after the launch, because they help the app be better, but they are not things that if they were not there, the application will not be able to function. So you need to learn planning, you need to learn prioritizing. Even when you have your own individual tasks, your own individual tickets, most times it's always multiple things. But so you need to know the most important one, the urgent one, whatever, the one that needs to go first, essentially. So now, talking about important versus urgent, this is the important versus urgent chart. So something that is important and urgent are things with like clear deadlines and consequences for not doing immediately. And those things are things that you do now. Something that is important but just doesn't happen to be urgent right away are things that you plan for. These things are things that have a set deadline that is kind of far away, or don't have a deadline at all, but they bring you closer to your goals. So those are things you plan for. Things that are not important but they're urgent, you delegate them to other people. You delegate them as, like, I've heard a lot of people nowadays talking about how they've gotten EAs, PAs to help them with mundane tasks, so they focus on what is important. This is exactly what they mean. So things that need to be done, but they don't necessarily require your specific skills, you can delegate these things to somebody else. Now, things that are not important and not urgent at all, why do you have them? These are distractions and they are not connected to your goals in any way, so you should eliminate them. If you are able to be proactive, if you are able to begin with the end in mind, and you are able to put first things first, at this point, hopefully you have become an independent team member. And when you become an independent team member, the next thing to think about is how you should go from being an independent team member to becoming an interdependent team member. And this is where, so the first part talked about your self-development as an individual. Now this part means learning about teamwork. And the first thing here is being able to think win-win. Know that teamwork is important for software engineers. You're going to, like I said initially, you're going to work with product designers, you're going to work with product managers. As a front-end person, you're going to be using APIs that are written by back-end engineers. As a DevOps person, you're going to be working with the entire team because their code is going through the CI/CD pipeline that you create, and all of these things. So you need to learn to work with people, and thinking win-win is something that is important. Teamwork is very important. Always take feedback. At the end of the day, you are learning something and the person is learning something back. An example of thinking win-win is two people exchanging value. Don't think about it as, oh, I'm doing this for you. For example, if you are working as a freelancer, don't think about it as, oh, I'm building this app for you. You are giving the person value in terms of the application that you built, and you're giving them your time, and in turn you're getting paid for that job. So it's a win-win thing. It needs to be treated as a win-win situation, as some kind of partnership. That's how it should be addressed. The next thing is seeking first to understand and being understood. And this is particularly interesting because I'm talking about inclusive teams. You need to learn to understand people. At least try. Because people are different. You're working with different kinds of people. You don't want to make them uncomfortable, because if you make them uncomfortable, they might not be bringing their most authentic selves to work. And at the end of the day, you don't have that effective team that you are trying to build. Don't be too quick to jump into conclusions. Be someone that is a good listener. Be someone that is empathetic. Be someone that is patient. That's how you can be a better person, a better team member, and encourage people to bring more of their authentic selves to the workplace because they would feel more comfortable around you. Although we talk about people recruiting to hire diverse talent, when we talk about inclusion is not for the HR, the recruiting managers, the hiring managers, and other people in management alone. Inclusion is for everybody, because if you are someone that is toxic in a team and there's a diverse hire, there are multiple diverse hires, and you have a really diverse team, as a toxic person, you are still going to make some team members not feel included. So this is something you should think about, and one way to do that is trying to understand people, listening, being empathetic, and being patient. The next thing is synergizing, and I'm going to read this out real quick. To synergize means to combine or coordinate the activity of two or more agents to produce a joint effect that is greater than their separate effects. And I'm going to talk about this with a story. So when we think about synergizing, it's trying to combine forces, joint forces together to create something amazing. Let's look at a basic application. Front end, back end. A front end site is great, except if you want it to be a static site, maybe it's a portfolio website. But the truth is, you are watching this talk currently on a platform. If this talk only had the front end things, you would definitely appreciate the UI, but let's be honest, you will not be able to use it. You wouldn't even be able to log in. The same thing with backend. Back-end engineers are amazing. They think about security, they write code to be able, like, for you to be able to do all the things that you want in your business logic. But let's be honest, if you have only the backend, as a customer, I'm not going to download Postman and be calling every single endpoint one by one. Maybe I have a manual and I have to call every single endpoint one by one, and that's how I communicate with your backend. At some point, I'll get frustrated and stop. But when you bring the effort of the front-end engineer to build the amazing UI, and you bring the effort of the back-end engineer that builds the amazing APIs, and there's a connection in the middle to make both of them work, that synergy exists, you come up with this amazing platform. You come up with YouTube, you come up with Twitter, things that look very great and are also usable. They have all the back-end features. You can check out your tweets, you can check out your videos, you can like a video and it reflects in the server and it reflects on the UI. You can do things, the UI is responsive, it's great, because these two efforts have been merged together. Synergy is something that's very important in teams generally. You're not going to be working in silos, you're going to be working as a team. So you need to learn how to synergize. You need to learn the culture of joining efforts together, allowing people leverage on your work and leveraging on the work of other people. That's something that is really important when you think about teams long term. And in staying interdependent, the last thing to think about is sharpening the saw. You need to constantly maintain yourself physically, maintain your health mentally, financially, in every single way possible, which means staying informed and staying healthy. And now there are other ways that you can sharpen the saw. One of them is recognizing burnout and taking breaks where necessary. The next one is resting, exercising, meditating, and eating well. Then learn more skills so that you can grow in your career, develop your brain, and keep climbing in that whole career ladder. Keep informing yourself, keep learning new things, keep growing as an individual, and strive to always be a better version of yourself. Maintenance is very important in every single sphere of our lives. In every single thing we do as human beings, we should always try to properly maintain ourselves and maintain the things that are around us. And I'm going to end this talk with an important quote, which is, coming together is the beginning, keeping together is progress, working together is success. Thank you so much for watching this, and I hope you have a nice day. I hope you learned something, and I hope you enjoy every other talk from every other speaker.